Welcome back. You're watching the Tuesday edition of Business Morning on Channels Television. We're coming to you live from our studio here in Lagos. And of course, we're talking about the Lagos economy. It is a commercial nerve center of the nation. It is a commercial hub. Everybody comes here to do business. Who is who in business is always definitely here. And who better to talk about the state of the Lagos economy than the #1 citizen himself. I'm talking about His Excellency Governor Babatunde Fashola, SAN. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for coming in.
Good morning.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you come into the studio to talk about latest developments in the state's economy. But let's start with you giving us your assessment of how the state's economy has fared in the last couple of months, at least for this year. Has it been in tandem with the expectations of the executive?
Well, it's certainly met our expectations. There have been some unexpected challenges, and we have always proceeded by planning for the worst and hoping for the best. But by the way, I think even in your introduction, this is where everybody comes, and when you look at the vehicular traffic, the migration from within and from across the continent, really, there must be something happening here. Otherwise, people won't be coming here. They will probably be leaving. So, and if you measure the economy, therefore, by the opportunities that it offers, jobs in spite of the challenges, businesses, if you measure by the number of banks, or by the tele-density, or by the internet penetration, or indeed by the fact that this is the first market for food, goods and services, something definitely is happening here. And the point I wish to stress is that is not a reserved right. It is earned by hard work. It is earned by the work that many of my predecessors have done, work that we must not drop the ball upon, because the right to remain the commercial center is not a birthright. It is earned by hard work. And you will see that in some other countries, states by mismanagement have lost that capacity and that right, and businesses have moved on to where they think that there's better service. You can measure all of that by the level of security and the commitment to the protection of human lives, how responsive the judiciary is, emergency response. We've contained a major epidemic, and it's an indicator of how robust the health system and health capacity is, and so on. There's so many parameters, and if you go across construction work, giving opportunities not only for construction firms and their employees, but also for people who are in the value chain of supply, iron rod, cement, food, water, and so on and so forth. So by many multiples, clearly the economy is heading north.
Governor Fashola, you mentioned some of those challenges. Let's pick them one by one. Let's talk about the jobs, job security, unemployment level, and poverty index that seems to be very, very high. But we also noticed that the economy has witnessed tremendous growth, and you've also, talked a little bit about it. But how do we juxtapose this paradox? We have high growth rates, but then we have unemployment on the rise, and we also have a poverty index hitting numbers that are quite unbelievable.
Well, you will see that when I started my intervention, I deliberately stayed away from those numbers because they don't mean anything to the unemployed man, or to the unemployed child, or to the unemployed woman. Growth, yes, what did we contribute to the growth? The logical way to explain the growth is that the economies of the West are currently underperforming. And even in economic undertakings, there's a point where you plateau. And then I think the West plateaued. And therefore, you will hear discussions now about capitalism probably having to reinvent itself. But across the Atlantic, on this side, this economy is just about to start. And it has one important element, perhaps its most important feature: the people, the numbers, the market size. 160 million plus people in need of services, of electricity, of a 21st century type end-to-end transportation system, of more malls, of high-tech hospitals, of high-tech schools, and so on and so forth. And there is the latent capacity there that is yet to be unleashed of also the purchasing power of that, and you can see it by the way goods and services move. So that accounts for the growth. It's not growth that we have really taken benefit of, and we won't take benefit of it until we solve the energy problem. So when you talk about poverty index is only a reflection of the things that are missing. Lack of power becomes defining in deciding whether or not there will be employment. Because as a contributor to the factors of production, it raises your price. If it raises your price, it means that the demand capacity for that particular good is raised by a factor of production that should not cost that much.
Well, sorry to cut you here, Governor Fashola. Yeah. It's not just electricity that we should be talking about. Let's talk about general infrastructure. Roads, for instance.
Electricity is part of the infrastructure. Let's deal with electricity first, and you will perhaps see the dots that I am trying to connect. Now,
including transport?
Yeah. Look, listen. Today, the choice mode of transportation across Nigeria is by air. Why is that? The reason is simple. The roads are in a very, very sorry state of repair. The rail is not there. I was in Apapa a few days ago, and we saw what happened to the cargo section of the rail. It had been taken over by trailers and tankers. And that is the cheapest and the easiest and most enduring way to move cargo like fuel, building materials, finished products from end to end. It happened here before. But let's go back to power. You see, and let's animate this a little bit. On the Apapa-Oshodi-Solo Expressway, there are about 3 industrial estates there. The Apapa Industrial Estate, the Maturi Industrial Estate, the Isolo Industrial Estate. Indeed, there are 4, and the Lupeju Industrial Estate. Now, I know that the Isolo Industrial Estate used to be a very busy area. People resuming work as early as 6:30 a.m. when I used to go to school as a teenager. If you're coming back in the afternoon, that morning shift is closing. If you're out late at night, as I occasionally was, you will see the night shift resuming. They're not there anymore. All of those industries have shut down. Why did they shut down? Largely power. Now, if you look at the cost of production, a welder, on this station, at 2 a.m. this morning, I was watching one of your programs this morning, and a welder was saying it costs him 1,500 naira a day to buy diesel. That's a cost he shouldn't have to part with. So when you see what power inadequacy has done, and you begin then to measure the extra costs that you have to incur, first to live, then to produce, you will see how difficult it is to run that kind of economy.
So let me now take you back to what the state earlier did this year, in 2014, the 7th Economic Summit, focused on power. Primarily, since that's what you have identified as one of the main challenges, inhibiting kind of growth that the state is supposed to be witnessing. What so far has the state achieved in terms of partnering with some of those investors, both domestic and foreign, who are actually at that summit?
I think we made it clear to Betty first that our intervention was an informed intervention. We realized that by the privatization policy in the power sector, government was taking a back seat. But as I said, as the host state to some of the distribution assets and the discos, we became then the local and municipal regulators, and we were ready to assist in whatever way they thought was necessary. Now, why did we make that decision? First is that by installing streetlights alone in Lagos over the last 7 years, we re-energized a night economy that had literally died. There was no pharmacy store that I can recall on any major high street that opened beyond 8 p.m. in 2007. They open now till midnight. Sometimes they run 24-hour service. The same thing with petrol stations. And everywhere you have a trading outlet, you have people, you have employment. In places like Ipaja, Bariga, Shomolu, and Obalende, where we did a cleanup, and Oshodi, the measurements that came back to us, because every project we implement, we go back and measure the impact. What we saw was that traders who closed at 7 p.m. because they were afraid people frying akara, frying dodo, and all of that, were trading late into the night. And we started monitoring their incomes and performances. You know what happened? Their income grew by 40% simply because they could trade extra hours. And these are the informed basis for deciding that, look, power must be the defining issue here. And what have we done? We've written to the companies to say, look, listen, there is opportunity for partnership between you and us. There are embedded generation possibilities here in estates like Lekki, in estates like Abramadesoya on the island, in estates like Magodo and Ogudu GRA on the mainland. Let us demonstrate in the shortest possible term that power can be delivered. We will undertake to provide the embedded power within your area of the and let's work out an arrangement to finance this. But I'm waiting for a response.
But you see, Governor Fashola, it's you've mentioned basically high rural to medium income areas. What about those areas that everybody doesn't really want to go to? The Mushins, the Shomolu, the Oshodi, those kind of places where we
I mentioned those areas for specific reasons. Those estates were built by Lagos State government. Don't forget, the whole distribution area of Ikeja has been sold. The whole distribution area of Lagos has been sold. Now, you know what? We can sit down and twiddle our thumb and wait for anything to happen and when it will happen. Okay? Now, but the point is, where is the easiest way to make an impact? You see, people have lived on promises and promises. And my sense of management is that demonstrate that it is possible and then you can retail down. When we started the public lighting process, we started on Aolo Road in Ikoyi. But we are now in Lawansin, we are in Itire, we are in Ipaja, we are in Shomolu, we are in Bariga. But we have to start somewhere first to demonstrate that this thing is possible. And another reason for that is that all of the distribution assets in those estates I mentioned were provided by Lagos State government. The transformers, the wiring, the poles and everything. And I said, look, let's see what deal we can work out here. You know, the story becomes more credible if you begin to hear at least from one part of Lagos that our power doesn't go again. For me, that is a serious sense of management that it is beginning to happen. It will get to our turn.
So let me take you back to something you mentioned. You said you visited the Apapa rails. The Lagos State government has been working on a light rail from Mautu to Badagry, passing through the National Theatre. How far gone is this project? Because we know that the state has had to take bonds, do bond tranches and the rest of it to fund this project. And charity begins at home, they say. You want to set your house right before you begin to go outside to go and start pointing out somebody else who hasn't cleaned his own backyard. Well, so we have that project still pending.
Well, that's quite perhaps not the exact way to measure it. That charity has started at home because Lagos State is the one that bears the burden of the lack of a national railway. About 90% or close to it of the cargo, rice, vegetable oil, cement, iron rod, and all of the imports that come into Nigeria pass through our roads. We pay a very, very heavy toll in terms of the life expectancy of our roads because of that problem. And the earlier it is solved, the earlier we will breathe a sigh of relief. Roads that should last 25 years are lasting less than that. That is one. Back to the light rail. The light rail is exactly not of the same calibration and capacity or purpose for an industrial and national railway to move heavy cargo. That's not what the light rail is designed for. It's for intra-city transport within the city as a faster, safer, and more urbane way to move people. Where are we? We have finished 4 stations. Mile 2 station is finished. Alaba station is finished. Orile station is finished. And Costain station is finished. So 4 stations are finished. And that's a track of about 7 kilometers, all done and dusted. We are now crossing from Costain to Marina, which is another 5-point-something kilometers. And we should finish that by early next year, hopefully before the end of Q1. And that will give us 12 kilometers of track line ready to run. So at some point next year, some early testing and hopefully some early service may start, because rails are built in sections. But there's still the very, very big problem, power. To power, we know what trains we want to use now. Where is the energy coming from? So this is really the determinant, and until we get it right, we're not going anywhere. Now, we've debated and we've shut down the idea of using diesel engines because it's not environmentally friendly. It's inconsistent with everything we have advocated about protection of the environment. So power is the real deal. And these are the basis for, so we're talking to a few people, we're trying to say, and these are some of the issues we're trying to say, look, how can we get this thing up and running? Yes, we know it's now in private hands, but government at the municipal level can still participate with you and catalyze these things. And why can we do that? We've done the Akute power plant to supply power to our waterworks, the Iju waterworks and the Adin waterworks. Those are the only waterworks that I know in this country now that have their own independent power. We've done the Lagos Island power plant, which services the State House, the Island Maternity General Hospital, Zone 2 Police Command, Lion Building, City Hall, the e-learning center, and about 11 schools, and the Dolphin Waterworks. We've done the Alausa power plant. We're finishing the Ikeja power plant. We're in pre-commissioning testing now, and hopefully the Lekki power plant should finish before the end of this year to add to our capacity to supply water to Lekki. But that's all we can do unless the discos open the door and say, let's create some partnership here so that we can take power to the homes.
Your Excellency, let's quickly take a break so you can catch your breath because you've been doing most of the talking. But when we come back, we're going to look at how Lagos State, being the largest commercial city, is going to consolidate this position, because like it or not, a lot of people take dressing from Lagos State. So if you're able to go ahead and do projects in your state and successfully implement them, then it can be replicated in the other states. And if this is replicated, of course we know what the domino effect usually can do. We can see the kind of growth that will come up. But hold on to that thought. And we'll come back to continue our conversation. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. We're coming to you live from our studio in Lagos. I've been having a conversation with His Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, SAN, and we've been looking at the Lagos State economy, some of the issues that have come up. Of course, we'll come back and continue this conversation. Please stay with me.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.
Well, I guess it's one of those mornings, fastest finger, they always say. But you're watching this morning on Channels Television. We're coming to you live from our studio here in Lagos, and we've been looking at the state of the Lagos economy. It's a commercial nerve center of the nation, and I've been having this conversation with the #1 citizen of the state, Governor Babatunde Fashola, SAN. He's still here with me in the studio. Thank you so much for sticking with me, sir.
Thank you for having
So
me.
let's talk about the efforts of the Lagos State government to ensure that they consolidate the position that they have at the moment of being the largest economy.
Well, consolidation requires first that you make what you have achieved an attitude rather than an accident, and that requires you to continue to build people, to continue to reinforce good habits and drop not so salutary habits. And that's one of the things we did excuse me, at our last retreat, and it's part of my getting to go retreats, and I think I have about 268 days left to get out. So but that's it really, and making sure now that institutions can take responsibility. So people don't need to have my telephone number in order to fix a road anymore. There's an agency, the Public Works Corporation, that does that. People don't need to call the governor. If there's a broken street lamp, there's an agency, the Lagos State Electricity Board, the Water Corporation is there, the Waste Management Board is up and running, and so on and so forth. And therefore, I think it's easy to continue to run with this and improve upon it. It's no longer, as I said, this state can't continue to run on an action governor. It must run on an action government.
So now, talking about action government, a lot of people have said the cost of governance is one of the problems that usually mitigates the growth of an economy, whether federal or whether state.
How is that so? I mean, I don't understand.
But that's the argument.
Help me understand the cost of governance.
Yes, because they say sometimes the cost of governance is pretty high.
Well,
and
when
it's
you look
always
at our cost of when you look at our cost of governance, I think we are one of the earliest governments to make it a conscious effort to reduce the cost of doing government business by reducing our recurrent expenditure gradually over the years. This is the last 2 years we've had anything close to a 58-42 budget capital to recurrent ratio. In previous years, we've done 60-40, 61-39. And when you look at the way our budgets have been implemented, there's no year that we have delivered in terms of budget expectation, performance, actual performance, less than 70%. And in the last 2-3 years, we are now in the high 80s. Last year, we closed at 85%. The year before, we closed at 89%. And I don't know any government in this part that has recorded such actual budget performance. And that's why you can connect the budget performance with the development we have been talking about, from housing to agriculture to transportation. And look, we've talked about the rail. Perhaps you haven't gone to look at the waterways, even if the work there is not finished. Today, by policy, by investment, and by strategic interventions, we have close to 200 water taxis running on Lagos waterways today, private capital funded, and bigger ferries are coming. The throughput today on our waterways, from about 100 and something thousand in 2007, we're moving 3 million people every month on Lagos water.
Which means the state is actually enjoying PPP, that's PPP arrangement.
Yes, it's part of the total spend of government. Why are they interested? Just like you build roads, perhaps people don't know, you have to dredge waterways. Just like you mark lanes on highways, you have to put signals and buoys and navigation equipment there. And that's what we're doing. And just like you build car parks and bus stops, you have to build ferry terminals. So all of these are things that we have put in place, and people are seeing that there's a serious commitment here to improve water transportation. And these are the final outputs of budgets. So they are not budgets that hang in the air, budgets whose impact you cannot measure. And in terms of sustainability, we have already designed and adopted a sustainable development plan for Lagos up to 2025. That's what we'll be handing over. How to ramp up some of the areas where we haven't gained traction. wastewater treatment, for example, sewage, increased water supply. The Adiyan Phase 2 water project is now under construction, should be finished in 2016. So what the next government simply needs to do is fund it to completion. We've commissioned it, it started, and switch it on in 2016.
Another thing the Lagos State government has actually started, and a lot of people are commending and in some cases giving knocks, is the Lagos Homes that has seen a couple of people actually getting homes. And some say that yes, it's a good initiative, it's a good scheme, but it's not as affordable as it ought to be. If the Lagos State government says it's going to give affordable houses, they're not as affordable because we have houses of, 3 million and above.
What do houses of 3 million look like? And what is affordable? We operate in an economy where we don't determine the interest rate, we don't determine the exchange rate, we don't determine the import tariffs. Now, so sustainability, which you talked about, depends first on us being able to replace what we put in. So if I collect your taxes and I use them to build a house for Mr. X, does it not require that Mr. X should refund at least the total cost of production so that I can build for the next person? If I collect 10 naira from you and I build a house at 10 naira and I sell it to Mr. X at 5 naira, am I doing good business with your money?
But Governor Fashola, why isn't the state looking at the option like what former Lagos State Governor Jakonde did in terms of the kind of houses that were actually built? They were actually affordable, low-cost houses that we still have standing till date. Do we need as much as that? Or we can get private developers that wouldn't take as much money that the state has probably spent right now on these buildings?
I think we should have another discussion about housing so that you will understand. I know how many estates we have signed up and given land to private developers in my first term to build houses. They can't build houses. Private developers don't keep cash in their pocket. They raise money from banks. At 24%, it's not going to happen. That is the reality.
So why doesn't the state go to the stock market to raise the money or raise the funds that they're going to need to build the houses?
Just a minute. Let me take us there. Let me take us there. If you raise money on the capital market, it's not free money. And let us understand that also. It comes at interest. There's a price to that money. The money on the stock market is not free. The cheapest money we can get is what we are putting in. Taxpayers' money. It has a collection cost, mind you, but it's not borrowed money. All of what we have done today is money we have saved from IGR. We're building on 23 sites. We have close to 12,000 houses to be completed between this year and next year. And I think we must be commended for that, because that is part of our innovativeness for bringing down the cost of delivery. If we borrowed money, the cost of delivery will be actual plus interest to the citizens. So those who say that, really, with respect, don't know the economics. I'm sorry, they don't know the economics. So, and then when you look at it, we've had Federal Mortgage Bank in this country for how many years? Since when I was a teenager. How many houses has it produced? By the end of this year, based on our projection, we would have exceeded the total number of mortgages that the combined banking sector of this country has financed by doing what we're doing. Building houses for people, asking them to pay an equity contribution of 30%, which is